What do you think inspires more violence? Saying, listen, okay, some of them are great people, but some of them are rapists, all right, they're bringing crime, we need to know who's in here, which is very similar to the rhetoric of Obama, or someone saying, hey, this president exterminates Mexicans. Yeah. Isn't that more likely to inspire a brown person to go out and say, oh, they're going to exterminate me, they mean what they say, he mean what he say? I want to hear what you think the worst, sort of worst fake news stories, worst misleading facts, the biggest outright lies regarding firearm ownership in recent days. So here are the top 5 that we've compiled for you. In the aftermath, obviously, of these shootings, the left-wing media, they churn out fake news faster than something that churns things out really quickly. Everyone's been jumping on this bandwagon for the moral high ground. Even the president of Mexico has been demanding more gun control. Not in Mexico, mind you, but here in the United States.
Oh my gosh, that's rich.
The president of Mexico, which by the way earned him a face-to-face state visit from President Trump.
Oh.
Hey, don't get tough with me, Ricardo, about the butt. I'll kick your butt. Okay? Hey, you gonna cry for me, Mexican boy? Cry for me, Mexican boy, huh? Squirt a tear for me, huh? Hi, Mr. Chips. Hey, Eric Estrada, I'm not done with you. Come on, cry. Come on, Mexican boy, cry for me. Come on, Andy Garcia, cry for me. Come on, Apocalypto, cry for me. Come on, cry for me. Come on. Wait.
I can tell by the reaction in the studio that no one here saw The Great Santini. We're going to help you wade through one of my favorite films, Robert Duvall. Look it up.
Oh my gosh.
5 lies from the last week. So, 5th lie. This is one that we've heard a lot. That Trump. This is one that's been parroted, and it really bothers me. I even talked about it in the cell phone upload video. People saying, "Oh, I hear you saying this, but where's the source?" All right, I've got it for you now. Humdrum 84. Okay, just so you know, I've heard you. This is a lie. You've heard it from me that President Trump made it easier for the mentally ill to purchase guns.
Despite these recent references and talk about mental health, Donald Trump actually canceled an Obama-era safety rule that tried to prevent mentally ill people from acquiring guns in the first place.
One of the only major actions that President Trump has taken on gun control is to block an Obama-era rule that made it harder for the mentally ill to have access to guns.
The only thing worse than your fake news is your fake nose. That was like Janet Jackson. So here's the truth. President Trump reversed an Obama administration rule that stripped Second Amendment rights from all senior citizens who had been declared incompetent to manage their pension or disability payments.
Or drive.
This is important. There are already laws in the book that prevent crazies from buying guns. Think about how scary this is. Just because a senior might need help managing their money.
Right.
Does that mean they should lose their right to basic self-defense?
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Even
it's a little shocking,
the ACLU had a real problem with this law and supported President Trump in reversing this.
Yeah.
Another lie that we've heard, this is one you've heard a lot, and it just drives me crazy. Anyone who's owned, this is one thing we've talked about, hashtag gift a gun. These lies go away once someone has ever purchased a firearm.
Yeah.
Once they understand the limitations on purchasing a firearm, once they understand what you can and cannot procure in this country, they go, I now understand that these people are lying. So one that they use constantly is this wordplay. The AK-47 style rifle was used in these shootings.
Police say that the AK-47 style rifle that Patrick Curtis used in the El Paso attack was bought legally.
Went into the Walmart first to eat before going back to his car, taking out an AK-47 style assault rifle and firing.
It's not a firearm, it's more of a bullet stylist. The El Paso shooter used a WASR 10, okay? Now, unlike the AK-47, there's no select fire. This is a semi-automatic weapon. And you're a competitive shooter, Bill. You see this all the time. They try to conflate automatic, semi-automatic, and they just say AK-47 style. Well, do you mean because it looks like it? Sometimes they're not even the same caliber.
You mean,
for example, I have an AR-15 on a 22 platform. It's not even the same caliber as most people are referring to. By the way, when we're talking about the actual AK-47 caliber fired from a semi-automatic rifle, let's compare it to a very common hunting round, the 30-06. Do we have this right here? Can we show it actual size? Yeah. Look at that.
Wow.
So there you have the 30-06. On the right is the AK-47, right, the round. So this idea that it's this death round. This happened with the AR-15 when they try to conflate it with M16, right? People think it's this laser machine of death. No, it's actually not. And any kind of a semi-automatic hunting rifle that has some sort of a detachable magazine could be far more deadly. Most people just aren't necessarily afraid of them because they have wood and steel as opposed to polymer.
It's the wood. It really does the trick.
All right. The third lie that I have a real problem. Let's just go to this right now. Actually, is this entire how much of this chart or digital pamphlet? This goes to me in the Hall of Fame as far as digital pamphlets, along with the "Please do not rape" passed out in Cologne, Germany. Look at this. Keep this up here. This whole BBC digital chart pamphlet. It says that the AR-15 can be fired 1,200 times, up to 1,200 rounds will be fired per minute. As an M16, a fully automatic, which is just an AR that's fully automatic, 950.
Whoa, those are numbers.
And the AK-47, by the way, is also a semi-automatic. So basically, guns 1 through 4, technically not a revolver, but all of those firearms outside of the M16 would be semi-automatic. But for some reason, one fires 50 and one fires 1,200 per minute.
Well,
This just highlights the fact that the media doesn't even care to do basic research. They're not looking over their shoulder for any kind of accountability.
Right. No, who's there to hold them accountable? Nobody. They just pull it out and don't say anything about it.
And this is important too. This one is so obvious that we're laughing at it, but it just happens to be the one where they were caught. And you see how they behave when they were caught. They don't issue, we're talking about journalistic integrity, right? They talk about fake news and the importance of legitimate news outlets,
Right.
like government-funded BBC. Retraction? Correction? No, we're just going to remove the, what is it? Does that average out to 90 bullets per second? What's 1,200? I'd cheat off your test in school.
Not a math Asian. No nails, no railroads, no math.
I'm not a math Asian.
By the way, hit the notification
gosh.
bell if you haven't already, because apparently subscriptions don't mean a whole lot, and YouTube's not going to be a fan of this one. Join Mug Club, loudofcrowder.com/Mug Club. You get the entire Blaze catalog, the daily show, of course, and do subscribe on iTunes and like us, rate us there. Crowder Bits is a channel on YouTube now. If you guys want to watch the
Check that
short sketches and clips, a lot of them feature half Asian Bill Richmond. All right, here's the second worst lie, I think. We do have to get going. We have Dan Crenshaw, I think, waiting.
Yeah.
This one really bothered me. You heard this all over the news outlet. We didn't have enough info about the Dayton shooter. Right? This was one, I watched CNN for 6 hours. The day of the Dayton shooting. We were there doing Change My Mind all morning. I was watching it. Why? Well, it turned out to be a radical leftist who called the Antifa firebomber a martyr. Okay? To give you a more specific example, in response to an activist tweet about what to do if Trump wouldn't leave the White House, the Dayton shooter responded, arm, train, and prepare. And here's the thing. We knew this was a radicalized socialist, far leftist Elizabeth Warren supporter. When the media could no longer pretend that the shooter's background and ideology were completely unknown, what did they do? They pretended as though it was irrelevant at that point.
Wow.
So for proof, here's the DNC pool boy in chief, Chris Cuomo, taking the moral high ground in covering the Dayton shooting.
I don't talk about who these killers are. I don't want to get into their biography. They are irrelevant in terms of why they did this and who helped them.
We don't want to get into their motive or their background? Really, Mr. DNC pool boy in chief?
Here's the easy part. A white nationalist coward who kills people to motivate a political cause is no different than an ISIS coward doing the same thing. They are both terrorists.
Wow.
And you know it.
When it comes to El Paso, I guess we're a little bit murky on the DNC rule book. So that's how he covers Dayton, and then El Paso. So wait. He's a piece of shit, right? Is that about right with Chris Cuomo? This brings us to lie number one, that the El Paso shooter, this has been spread everywhere. What we used to joke about, and people would say, oh, you're picking a small, you see this with leftist YouTubers all the time, they say, you pick a small percentage of social justice warriors. That's not the left. The real left, right, most liberals, we want to talk about the issues in taxes. We're not offended by everything. We don't think everything's racist. Really, the number one lie that I saw was that the El Paso shooter was inspired by Trump's calling for the extermination of Latinos, that it was racist, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, these are quotes. On MSNBC, Nicole Wallace claimed that President Trump actually called for the extermination of Latinos.
You now have a president, as you said, talking about exterminating Latinos.
To be fair, we actually do have the clip of President Trump's now infamous speech about exterminating Latinos. That was brought courtesy of the BBC.
Yeah.
No one called her on it on the panel, but then she admitted on Twitter later on that she misspoke, and then instead lobbed other accusations of racism at the president. Here's one, we talk about this, the rhetoric, right? Well, hold on a second. If all of us believed that there was someone out there right now in the United States who was actively exterminating, for example, an actual Nazi, actually exterminating Jews, actually exterminating Mexicans, right?
Yeah.
A reasonable response, if this person was committing an act of extermination, would be violence. If that were the case.
Sure.
So let me ask you, what do you think inspires more violence? Saying, listen, okay, some of them are great people, but some of them are rapists, all right, they're bringing crime, we need to know who's in here, which is very similar to the rhetoric of Obama, or someone saying, hey, this president exterminates Mexicans.
Yeah.
Isn't that more likely to inspire a brown person to go out and say, oh, they're going to exterminate me, they mean what they say, he mean what he say? According to his own manifesto, what we think is his manifesto right now, because apparently it was posted by someone else, but let's go with the idea that it's his own manifesto. The shooter explicitly stated that he wasn't motivated by Trump. So we've already dealt with Dayton, who was a radical leftist. So let's deal with this idea that this guy was a white supremacist / conservative, because they want you to believe that two are interchangeable, just like they want you to believe that Donald Trump wants to exterminate Mexicans. I hate all the things. Notice the general stuff in the El Paso manifesto that's linked to Trump or Fox News could just as easily be linked to almost any politician. By these standards, we could definitely say that Obama inspired the manifesto. Let me read a quote, that way I can give my brain time to recover. He said, "The American people are a welcoming and generous people, but those who enter our country illegally and those who employ them disrespect the rule of law. And because we live in an age where terrorists are challenging our borders, we cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, and unchecked. Americans are right to demand better border security and better enforcement of the immigration laws."
Racist.
We could say that inspires. I mean, you can look at the Flores consent policy under Clinton, back to while we're talking about people in cages, and you could say he inspired the manifesto. And sure, there are clear sort of right-wing aspects of the ideology, but a large part of the manifesto, people don't talk about this, was devoted to neo-environmentalism. The type that we hear ranted about by Ocasio-Cortez. He even quoted the Lorax as inspiration.
Wow.
This is a crazy person who was inspired to mass murder people by a children's film, and it wasn't even Pixar. And here's something just as important. This is general, broad stroke, where they say Donald Trump, because Donald Trump says we need to close the borders, as everyone has. But the very specific content that you see that's unique to the manifesto is like Richard Spencer-esque white nationalist socialist stuff. It's pushing for universal health care, universal basic income, but we can only afford it if we get rid of immigrants. That's what he was talking about. This is what's so alarming to me. If you read it, when people say, oh, you think Nazis are socialists? They were nationalists. National Socialist Party, right? The same thing, neo-Nazis are just socialists who watched a little too many Edward Furlong films, okay? They think if we just got rid of brown people, if we just got rid of immigrants, we could have socialized everything. That's not conservative at all. And one thing, and we have to go on this, that really pissed me off. Did you see the Chris Cuomo tweet where he was saying, actually, if you look at, was it Scalia, I think? He said, if you look at Scalia, he actually was the one who rewrote the Constitution, inserted in the Constitution the right to private firearm ownership. So originalists, you should know that. Hold on a second. Again, that wording, do we have a different constitution now? No. What it was an interpretation of the original intent from the Constitution, which is crystal clear when you look at all the founding documents in tandem together. You probably, Bill, you know this more than anyone, but I have to get moving on this here. Go back to Heller versus D.C. This is something that they don't tell you. Okay, Heller versus D.C. is that case where you look at the dissenting opinions. Yeah, we're talking about Scalia. The decision, thank God, said, of course, private citizens have the right to own firearms. So when you look at the dissenting opinions in that case, it wasn't, oh, we should get rid of fully automatic weapons. No. It wasn't background checks. It wasn't gun show loophole. It was when you have people like Ginsburg saying private citizens have no right to own a firearm whatsoever.
Yeah.
That was the only legal argument made. You can read it. Heller versus D.C. Search it right now. But Chris Cuomo won't say that. Why? Because he knows that is just as unpalatable to you as the idea of people going out there with panzers down the street, right? They say most Americans support reasonable gun control. And then they quote Heller versus D.C. Hold on a second. Do they consider reasonable gun control? You can't own any firearms at all? Because that's what the leftist judges said. And to give you an idea, when you look at this unholy amalgamation of big tech and media and the government, I was working with Google, right? Google actually came to me, YouTube. They came to me and told me, hey, start running some ads on YouTube, right? Start running your videos as ads on YouTube. And I said, well, I don't know about this. They said, no, let us help you start a campaign. One of the videos was a video that we did about the gun show loophole. So I started running this as an ad. And she said, oh, wow, this is interesting. Maybe I'll watch this when we're done. By the way, I have all these emails in case anyone has questioned me, so you can keep you can track this for me.
I'm tracking
and I said, oh, wow, what's interesting? She said, well, I don't really know. I haven't really fired a gun. I said, oh, you've never shot a gun? She said, no. I said, you ever owned one? She said, no, never owned a gun. Anyone in your family ever owned a gun? No. I said, oh, where do you work? She worked in, I think, product management and ad development, one of those made-up terms. And I said, oh, so do you know anyone who owns a firearm? She said, no, it's really not that kind of place. No one. I said, so you don't know anybody who has ever owned or shot a firearm? The answer was no, and these people are meeting with representatives to determine firearm policy, which, by the way, includes the idea, the dissenting opinion, that you have no right to own a firearm whatsoever. Think about that for a second. Think about those people being in control of this aspect of your God-given right to self-preservation. And if it doesn't send chills down your spine, then maybe Caitlyn Jenner, eat my will. Hey there, if you like this video, this is the part where I would usually tell you to subscribe, but I can't do it anymore. I'm going to tell you to subscribe, and then YouTube is going to decide that we can't reach you even though you subscribe to this channel, and then I'll say hit the notification bell, and then the notification bell won't even be there anymore. I don't know what to say. More than likely, you'll find my face in a milk carton. But do what you can to stop it. It probably won't do much.